Hey friends, I'm going to show you brushes, my favorite brushes. I get asked about brushes a lot. And the thing about brushes is you have to use what works best for you. I tend to use a lot of different brushes. So I'm just going to show them to you. And they're not necessarily linked because, again, different price points. Some of these, literally, I looked, I can't find them. They don't make them anymore, but you can find something similar if this is something that you would be interested. So I'm going on a trip. Just grab the brushes that I'm going to be using for the look, which is all this stuff. Go over there. You'll see all the products I use for my eyes and my skin. You can see how I did it. You can see what I used. But this video is going to show you the tools I used. So again, I didn't link any of these, but that's why I wanted to kind of take a little bit more time and talk you through it. The one thing I will say that I don't have in this bag is a brush. Like, this is the Nars 42 brush. Typically you'll see me use something like this in the crease, but for this eye look, there's not really any crease work. So the only brush not mentioned is something like this. There's so many of these types of brushes. This one's from Sigma. That's the only brush I'd add to your collection if you don't have it already. Okay, so again, traveling. So these are the things that like I must have. And I'll go into the tools first. So I have a powder puff. This one, I don't even know where it's from, but you can get them a lot of different places. Obviously great for pressing powder into skin. Typically you'll see me when I'm doing my makeup. Like, if I already have my face makeup done and I don't want to disturb it, or I'm going back in for final touches, you'll see me do this so I can like put this against my skin instead of my hand and have it mess up my makeup. Always have a couple of tissues with me. Obviously an eyelash curler, and again, this I've said this so many times, but I think it's important to say. I've had this for years and years. You don't need to replace your eyelash curler that often. What you do need to replace is this little pad in here. I do it about once a month because it can get germy, in which case you need to wipe it down with an alcohol prep pad. These are so cheap at the drugstore. But then change this little pad like every month or so, depending upon how often you use an eyelash curler. There's a little ridge that forms in there and your lashes can get stuck, and this can rip out your lashes and it just won't work as well. So you can get these little replacement pads on Amazon. Stick them in there, really important. But it's the Airbrush from Charlotte Tilbury, simply because packing this is hard. So like a powder puff, I like to use a big fluffy brush. You'll see me to press in my powder and then buff it and swirl it in. This is going to be, because it's, you know, more flexible, it's not as a concentrated application as this. So I really like this for powder, but this is hard to pack. So I went ahead and bought this, and it's a really nice brush. So a big powder brush is super important to have. Let's start with the face brushes. So I showed you the powder brush. For contour, this is the Nars Eta Brush. It's an investment brush, but again, I've had this, I don't know how long. And it's just so sturdy, and it does such a good job of putting your contour in and then blending it gently. I have these things, they're called brush guards. You'll see them, and I got a variety pack. I think I got them from Nigel Beauty in California. But basically it's going to protect the bristles and keep them from getting all frumpy. So if you are someone who stores your makeup brushes in a bag, this is something you might want to invest in. On my makeup table, this is what I use. It's an old candle, and I just store them in here while I'm using them. But for travel, these little brush guards are fantastic. And again, that is a brush I know they still have. A lot of these brushes, not sure. So this is one of them. I'm not sure if they still have this. Also a Nars brush. It's really kind of cool. Not necessary, but I got like 40% off. So I wanted to add it to my collection. It's a very fragile brush, but I use this for adding cheek highlight. There are 10 million brushes you can use for this. A great one that I typically use is the setting brush from Real Techniques. These are so cheap, and they're just a perfect, you know. The only difference between these two is this is a little more packed than this, and I wanted something really light and fluffy for the highlighter I'm taking with me. Bronzer brushes, my goodness, there are 10 million on the market. This one that I'm taking with me is from MAC. It's so old, it's completely rubbed off there. But I do like a nice angle brush. If you're somebody who's just kind of getting into bronzer and needs to know right where to put stuff, an angle brush really, really helps you. I know Sigma has a bunch of these. Sigma is a great brand, by the way, and they typically always have fantastic sales. So check them out. But this is a angled brush for my bronzer. Here's a huge makeup artist tip. You do not have to use a brush for its intended purpose. What you need to know, more than what brushes you want to use, is what makeup you want to use. So once you get a solid routine down and you find out, you know, I love to do eyeshadow, I like to concentrate on my skin, I like to apply my foundation with a brush versus my fingers, whatever that is, then you can start get the brushes you want. Because there isn't like one brush for what you want to do, right? You can use any brush for anything as long as it works for your face. For example, this is one of those brushes that they don't make anymore. The Kat Von D brush. They've changed ownership. This is actually a foundation brush. But in this case, I want to use a very, very pale blush, which again, you can see in my video. It's the shade First Love. And I'm going to get just the slightest effective blush. So, moral of the story, use what brushes work for you, and it really helps to know what makeup you're going to use first. Hope you're still with me. We're going to now get to the eye brushes. And this is one of those things where, you know, I've tried my darndest. They don't make this brush anymore, but I use this every day. I'm so glad I got 2 of them back in the day. It was the Smashbox 10 double-ended. Maybe you can find it somewhere, but this is the one you'll see me use. Normally I put on eyeliner and then I either smudge it up or I'll push it into the base of my lashes with this brush. I don't ever really apply anything with it. I just use this to smudge. So I love a good smudgy brush, as well as a really solid pencil brush. Now, these are both Wayne Goss. Again, I think he's reformulating. I don't know if they have them or not. But these are 2 versions of basically the same brush. This is just smaller. I use this one specifically for like under my eye. And then this one for like buffing out eyeshadow if I want to smudge it out and make it really smoky. So speaking of eyeshadow, these are the last 3 brushes, and this one is from Zoeva, the 227V Soft Definer Brush. I love this. It's synthetic, really flexible, but has kind of a nice like feathery end. This is what I'm using to apply this bronzy shade. It's a cream eyeshadow all over the lid. You can pack it on and then use the ends to just kind of feather it out. And I like to use, everybody's got to have a crease brush. This is the Sigma Blending Brush E25. It is so important to have this in your kit. MAC 217 is an old favorite. Everybody makes these, but MAC 217 and the Sigma E25 are my favorites. This is great because if you have a huge crease like I do, which is really hard to manipulate without looking like a raccoon, or if you have a really small sort of defined crease, this is going to benefit everybody. If you don't have a crease, if you have a hooded lid, if you have what they call a mono lid, and you want to define that crease, you can absolutely do that with this brush. And then last but not least, this is a cheapy brush I found. It's from Juno & Co. It was one of those guys. I was like, I'm just going to get this to meet my shipping requirement. And it's fantastic. I'm not worried so much about keeping the shape. All I'm worried about is the fluffy factor. And all I use this brush for is going back around the edges of my makeup. Typically, I'll use like a translucent powder, or I'll use, in this case, I used a little bit of highlighter just to go around and sort of buff everything together, buff it out so you really get this nice gradient up into the brow bone. Clean up around the edges here, and that's it. And then I'll like wipe this brush off, but I never really put color on this. I just use it to buff. So those are just the brushes I use for this makeup look. It's kind of a good like basic collection that's going to get you a lot of mileage. Again, you can buy pre-made sets. That's a really great place to start. I always suggest the one from Sigma. You don't have to get expensive brushes. Once you figure out what you want and you're going to use it every day and you need a workhorse brush that's going to stand up to what you're doing, go ahead and invest. But as long as you take care of your brushes, keep them clean, keep them safe, they're going to last you a long time. Check out the other videos for how I did the makeup, where you can see these bad boys in action, and I will see you next time.